You are listening to the Wi-Fi Ninjas podcast, where we talk about wireless technology. Here are your hosts, Mac Daring and Matt Starling.
Hey everyone, Matt here. No Mac today, but not to worry. We have got one of Meraki's finest Wi-Fi guys, Steve Scarr. How are you, Steve?
Very well, thanks, Matt. Yourself?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for jumping on the podcast with us today and replacing Mac. Very excited to have you on here to talk about all things Wi-Fi to do with Meraki.
No problem. Apologies, I'm a very poor replacement, but I'll do my best.
A lot of people might be thinking this is an upgrade and then not want Mac back.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Would you like to just maybe introduce yourself a little bit to all the listeners?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Hi, everyone. Steve Scarr. So I work as a Meraki CSE, consulting sales engineer for Cisco Meraki here in the UK, and I also act as the EMEA product lead for the MR wireless portfolio.
Perfect. So yeah, we're going to be talking all things Meraki and Wi-Fi, and then maybe something else that the listeners might not be aware of towards the end of the podcast. So yeah, why don't we just jump straight into it, Steve?
Okay, no problem at all. So basically for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm just going to cover off updates from a Wi-Fi 6 transition perspective, how Meraki customers are warming to our Wi-Fi 6 proposition. Then I'm going to look at a deep dive into Meraki Health, which is the assurance play within the Meraki dashboard. I'll start off covering off some of the features that were with Meraki Health since its inception, and then we'll look at some of the latest features that have just come to the product. I'll even give you a sneak glimpse of something that's coming down the pipeline.
Perfect.
And then, sorry.
Nice, perfect. I just wanted to call out here, if anyone's listening on audio only, we are recording a video and Steve is sharing some slides and we'll be doing a demo later on, but we'll be talking through it to describe what we're seeing. But if you do get a chance, jump onto the YouTube video and watch, because I'm sure it's going to be extremely interesting. Absolutely.
And then we'll wrap up with a forward glance at the next release of major firmware, R28. So without further ado, I'm just going to now look at our Wi-Fi 6 transition. We'll discuss the end of sale update that we issued at the end of January, and we'll have a look at some of the figures around the Wi-Fi 6 transition for our Meraki customers. So those of you who weren't aware, towards the end of January this year, we issued a public notice advising the industry of the end of sale announcement of the majority of our Wi-Fi 5 portfolio. So this was the first time we've issued a 5-year support period, and this was to align both with the broader Cisco and from our competitors in the marketplace from a strategy perspective. The end of sale support date will be nearly the end of July 2026. But there's an important point to take away is end of support doesn't mean end of dashboard connectivity. It does mean that hardware and software issues will not be covered under warranty, but you can still consume VAPs within dashboard. So how is Meraki's Wi-Fi 6 transition going? Well, simple answer is very well. Okay, the figures we get from the product team, we're on track to cross 80% of Q3 bookings being Wi-Fi 6 access points, and we expect that to cross 90% mark in Q4 for all wireless bookings.
Yeah, and just to add in here, I have personally designed and deployed quite a lot of Wi-Fi 6 Meraki deployments now. Even just yesterday, I was in London doing a post-validation survey of a new Wi-Fi 6 Meraki deployment that I'd done, and I have to say it works very well. I've been very impressed with the performance, and so is the customers. They seem to be loving the new Wi-Fi 6 access points and how it's working in their environment. So yeah, just to kind of like back up what I'm seeing as well, lots of customers are choosing to go with Meraki and Wi-Fi 6 access points.
Well, it's good to hear that. We appreciate any feedback we get from customers. I think one of the reasons why our customers have been so open to the transition is that we've made the migration path from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6 very obvious, specifically from a use case perspective. So, for example, if you had a requirement for a Wi-Fi 5 medium density AP, such as the MR42, there's an obvious migration path across to the MR46 from a Wi-Fi 6 perspective.
Yeah, and another thing that the customers seem to be really liking is the almost like the new sleekness and the design of these access points. A lot of customers are saying how nice they look, and you're getting less pushback from an aesthetic point of view from the architects. So I did a brand new like modern office, and we were told that we didn't have to try and hide these beautiful access points for once. So I have to say they do look very nice and
That's
sleek.
good to hear. Yeah. I mean, reputedly they took their inspiration from a sports car. So when you look at the cross section view of the access point, you can see the nice curves that you can see that they probably took some inspiration from the sports car. So just looking at the portfolio from a Wi-Fi 6 perspective, we've got a range of both indoor and outdoor APs. All of the Wi-Fi 6 APs use our quad radio architecture. So you've got dedicated 2.4 and 5 gigahertz client serving radio. Sole purpose is to serve clients 100% of the time. Then the third radio is the workhorse radio, the dual band scanning radio, and this does all of the integral functions required for enterprise wireless networks. It scans a different channel every second, and it's looking for a myriad of information such as neighboring AP data, 802.11 non-Wi-Fi related interference, and any perceived threats to the network. That information is all then collated by dashboard, and it's used for a number of mechanisms in dashboards such as auto RF to balance the transmit power channels, and Air Marshal, where it's taking that perceived information around threats and deciding whether to alert a network admin to a potential threat on the network, or indeed, depending on the configuration, actively containing that threat on the network. And then last but not least, we've got the fourth radio in the architecture, and that's the BLE radio. Specific call out in this matrix to the 46E. So that is our connectorized indoor AP. That gives you the capability to attach our smart antennas. Now, the reason why we call them smart antennas is the AP can automatically detect which antenna has been connected to it, and therefore adjust its transmit power accordingly to remain within regulatory domain requirements.
Is this one of the first access points that does this? Because usually the access points...
It's one of the first. Yeah. So the Wi-Fi 5E iteration, the 43E, that was the first AP to have that smart antenna technology. We've continued it because it was so well received by the industry. We've continued that functionality in our Wi-Fi 6.
Oh, I've learned something new today now, because I didn't realise that it was available or that does that, so that's very handy.
Absolutely. Yep. No problem at all. And then for indoor see outdoor, so a couple of our APs, as our engineers in San Francisco call them, these are our indoor APs in Armour. So the 76 and the 86, again, the only functionality difference is it's based on the use case and the capacity of the APs, but again, that quad radio architecture at the heart of the outdoor offering as well. We do have a range of external antennas for the outdoor APs. Just to touch on the point I made previously, the outdoor APs are not smart antenna technology, so it's just the internal internal antennas that are supported by those connectorized APs. So just looking at the landscape for the Wi-Fi 5 portfolio after that end of support announcement. So effectively, with the exception of the MR30H, our hospitality access point, and along with the MR20 and the MR70, everything in this AP matrix will be end of support July 2026. So that was it from a hardware update perspective. What I wanted to focus on now is the Meraki Health feature. So, back in 2019, we launched phase one of our journey for Meraki Health. So, based on feedback we received from our customers, we evolved the data we collected from a wireless health perspective to make it easier to consume. So, based on the metrics that we gather from Dashboard, we knew that wireless health was one of the most prevalently used pages within Dashboard. But we were also receiving feedback from our customers saying, it's great that we have this holistic view of the overall health of the network, but when I'm trying to segue from that holistic overview to specific issues with clients, it's a bit unwieldy to be moving around different parts of dashboard. So Meraki Health aims to provide simple and intelligent solutions for our customers to troubleshoot issues. Simplicity is a totem of Meraki. Everything is done with simplicity in mind. So we intend to make Meraki Health easy to use and understand, have the right data at the right time in the right view. So going back to that troubleshooting analogy again, rather than having to segue between different parts of dashboard to collate all of the information you require for that root cause analysis, we feel that we have rendered all the relevant data in one single view. And then last but not least, we extended that assurance past the access point to take in the Meraki full stack. So now you have visibility of the full network data path. And that leads on nicely to the end-to-end visibility with the client health widget. So as I mentioned, this provides that end-to-end data path for network admins. You'll have to take my word for it, for those of you who don't know me, but prior to starting at Meraki, I did used to work for a living, and I have taken those support calls. The internet is slow, the wireless network is slow, I can't access my social media stream. And I, like a lot of you, realise that sometimes the root cause analysis for that issue lies past the AP. But from an investigative perspective, you're having to move through different parts of the network, different management utilities to understand where the issue lies. With this client health widget, you have that full network data path with additional context. We're using that standard traffic light symbolism we use extensively through dashboard to highlight any potential issues to network admins. Now, the client health widget provides hugely valuable information, but it's real-time or near real-time. It only goes back prior to hours. However, a lot of our customers often want to look back further at historical data of a particular client, and the widget can't always accommodate that contextual information. So in order to help our customers to look for that historical information, we've provided the connections and the performance tab. Now, for those of you familiar with Meraki Dashboard, we try to maintain a constant look and feel across the product portfolios, as well as when we release new features within Dashboard. So as well as having the connection and the performance columns in the clients page, we also have them on the AP pages as well. Now, we've also introduced the historical timeline, okay, but I don't want any of you to think of it as just a new look event log. One thing we've tried to do is, again, with that simplicity, is give our clients client status and provide a colloquial view of what's happened from a connection or a session perspective. Like many features within Dashboard, we will add additional context to this as we move forward with the production of the timeline. But as I mentioned, it's not just a new look event log. We do also provide recommendations and next steps based on root cause analysis, and hopefully we'll see that in the demo shortly. Now, staying with that theme around simplicity, and I'm sure you're starting to realize that simplicity is a kind of a watchword we have here at Meraki. We've also created the ability for Dashboard to look outside any timeline constraints and admin puts on that root cause analysis if we think that there's additional information that's pertinent. So the example you have in front of you, a device has successfully connected to an SSID for 3 minutes, but has unexpectedly experienced a DHCP issue. So the DHCP server failed to offer a response when the client requested an IP address. Now, as we look into this and we look into the corresponding event within the timeline, we can see the possible root cause analysis here, as well as suggestions from Dashboard where you may like to go within Dashboard to check your work from a configuration perspective. But we also realize that there's additional contextual information outside of that initial 12-hour time span specified that is pertinent to this issue. So we bubble up that information in the timeline. We also then highlight the fact that although this is pertinent to your root cause analysis, this is outside of that original time span you've specified. Now, that's pretty much all the functionality we launched with at from a client health perspective. But what I wanted to do now is focus on some of the new features that you may or may not have seen within Dashboard, as well as that sneak peek to a new feature. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you is around the onboarding and performance columns that we've added to Dashboard client database. Now, as we did with wireless health moving into client health, we already had the data within Dashboard to assess from a performance perspective how our clients were onboarding and also what the perceived experience was of that client once they joined the network. But again, we wanted to render that information in a different place in Dashboard to make it easier to consume for our admins. So, as you can see here, we've got a client within the database, and we can see that it's only managed to successfully connect to the SSID 3% of the time. When you click on the hyperlink for the client and segue into the client's page, we'll see corresponding collating information from the client health widget backing up this evidence around the poor connectivity. And then as we drill into that event timeline again, we see a corresponding event around the failed connection, this poor performance or poor onboarding experience for this client. Now, our product team are looking to bring intelligence into the Meraki Health solution. And we wanted to make sure that we can highlight what is happening on a customer's network, what is expected to happen on a customer's network, against versus when there is an anomaly, an unexpected event on the network. Hence, we've created a brand new graph that will highlight any anomalies that are seen in the network over a period of time. We're using this graph to create a baseline of the expected performance of the network, and then also using this AI and ML engine to generate smart alerts to alert network admins to these anomalies on the network. So this is the new graph, and what's different about this graph compared to all the other graphs in Dashboard is that it's using that AI ML engine on the back end to learn from historic data and adjust the thresholds at network level. So gone are the days when a network admin has to go into each and every single network and adjust thresholds. Starting with this anomaly graph, we're making this process truly simple and seamless for our users on Dashboard to onboard with. You turn on the smart threshold feature with just a simple toggle switch, and this will enable that AI and ML engine on the back end to start baselining the network performance of that network.
So Steve, if I wanted to enable this on my network at home, am I able to do this, or is this like something that's coming soon? Like when will us common folk be able to access these nice new fancy features?
So this will be released with R28 from a GA perspective, but you can run the beta firmware now on your network should you want to run this feature today.
Okay, cool.
Which takes me nicely to the demo. So I'm just going to swipe across here, and hopefully you can now see my dashboard.
Yep, all good.
Okay, all good. So what we have here in front of us is one of our customers' network. They are a certain number of customers that allow us read-only access to their networks to allow us to demonstrate their networks from a sales perspective. Now, what we can see is we've got a client that's currently offline to this network, but from a full data path perspective, we can see that connectivity of that client all the way through Dashboard. We know that wireless health widget goes back prior 2 hours, so we have got some information around the client's experience on the network. As I mentioned, when you hover over each logical step, you get additional information bubbled up. So we're using that traffic light symbolism. As you can see here, we've got a red for the connection between the device and the AP, so we know it's offline. However, in the prior going back 2 hours, we know that it has been online, and when it was online, it had a very good signal quality with the access point. Channel utilization was very low, and the contention ratio between other connected clients was low as well. We've also got our live tools. So you have the ability from the client health widget to launch the live tools that's going to help you with any sort of root cause analysis you have to do. So you can test IP connectivity to the client or launch a packet capture. And the beauty of our packet capture engine, and I alluded to it earlier, but I did used to work for a living, but I used Wireshark infrequently. So the first thing I had to do was have a look at the wiki pages to work out each of the specific filters I needed to apply to focus on the traffic that was pertinent to me. When you launch the packet capture window from a specific client, we make the educated guess that it's probably fair to say that you'll want to focus on this client. So we will already preempt that filter for that specific client. As we move up through the network data path, we can see additional information around backend services. So as well as that access points connectivity to the access layer, we also can see from a client perspective if there are any issues resolving DNS or authenticating. And again, we've got live tools available to us as well. Now, as I mentioned, if you want to look back over data going back further than 2 hours, then the connection and the performance tabs are there for you. So I've rendered this data for the previous 24 hours, and we can see from a connectivity perspective where this client is having issues connecting to dashboard. Connecting to the wireless network. Now, as I mentioned, this look and feel is identical to wireless health, but it's from a specific client perspective. So we can see this client is having a fairly difficult time authenticating to the network. Nearly 40% of the time, this client fails to authenticate. We then highlight which APs are problematic for this client, so we can understand if this issue is just with a specific access point or if this authentication issue is following the client around the network. And as you can see, again, using that traffic light symbolism, we've got a number of APs highlighted in red or amber that indicate authentication issues for this client. We then want historical information on how is the network performance perceived by this client when they are associated to the network. So we have the performance column for this. Again, using the same 24-hour reporting window, I can understand which applications are being consumed by the client, what its experience has been like on the network. Has it been able to maintain a good signal quality? Has it had a lot of co-connected clients on the AP? Has there been a lot of channel utilization across the network? And then ultimately, has it been able to maintain good data rates on the network? Now, as well as having this specific information on the graphs around data rates or number of clients on the AP, we also have the corresponding information around which access point they're connected to. So as I move across the timeline, you can see the roaming events for that client as they move to an access point in Reed Pit and then back into the grammar school building. Now, I also mentioned we had those onboarding and performance columns. What I've got here is I've got the same network's client database and I've filtered it based on onboarding issues. Now we can see that this device here is only able to connect 25% of the time successfully to the network. As I mentioned, you can click on the client link, quickly segue to that client page, and then you have the corresponding information from a performance perspective for that client. So you can have that holistic view from a network perspective, but then quickly in one click zero in on any clients that are having perceived issues with the network.
Must have been because it's an Android.
Well, I'll let you comment on that one, Matt. And then, then we get to the smart alerts feature that I mentioned. So new to dashboard is the ability to enable these alerts based on, again, the client's experience on the network. So I can enable an alert for clients that are experiencing a poor signal strength, and then you can add additional granular information. So if you want to focus on a specific SSID, or if you only want to focus, for example, on clients that are having a really poor time of it from a SNR perspective. And as I mentioned, if you wanted to enable the smart thresholds AI and ML engine, it is literally a simple toggle of this button here. Now, in the 5 years at Meraki, I've seen a number of these features in dashboard. And again, using that simplicity watchword, you have a button to enable a highly performant feature. but you also need that nice, warm, fuzzy feeling that, okay, well, I've pressed that toggle switch. Is it doing anything? What am I actually seeing? What's the benefit from enabling that feature? So, as well as getting the smart threshold alerts, you also then get additional context in your access point health menu around any anomalies that are detected in the network. Now, I'm going to move this out to the previous week. And we're looking for any flags on that AP Health timeline that's going to explain away any anomalies that are on the network. Now, what we're doing is we're taking that AI and ML smart engine and it's baselining the network. So we know in normal operating parameters, we can expect a certain number of issues from a connectivity perspective. Now, what we actually see is over the previous week, there have been 5 anomalies detected on this network. And if I hover over the latest here, we can see that for 5 minutes yesterday morning, the number of client failures was higher than that smart threshold that's been generated for this network. Now, what I want to do is just go back to my slides now, and we'll just cover off the last of the health update as well as the R28 update. So, as you can see, we've restructured the way alerts are typically built. So the new Meraki Health alerts are built to provide essential proactive alerting whilst requiring as little technical knowledge as possible. Not all admins know what a good or a weak SNR is, so how are they expected to define a threshold by which to monitor the performance of the network? We ask for the minimum configuration required from the user while still allowing important parameters such as SSIDs, time duration to be user configurable. And some alerts are going to use that smart threshold AI ML engine that we saw in the demonstration. But again, with that totem of simplicity that's always at the forefront of any of our engineering design, we've made it very easy for our clients, our customers, to enable that feature. So the alert's been triggered. Now what? Okay. Context, as we know, is key. Let's take the analogy that you are an on-call support engineer. Again, I've had those bleary-eyed phone calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's fair to say you're not going to be plugged into dashboard at that time. So we wanted to ensure that the intelligence is not just built into dashboard, but also into these alerts that are sent out to the network administrators. These new alerts are going to provide appropriate root cause analysis, next steps for resolution highlighted in that email. So you're getting that context in the email. So you're woken up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, for example, with this email that you see in front of you here. This is an alert notifying you that a number of clients have been affected by poor signals quality on the network. We make some recommended fixes. We provide the contextual evidence as to why this alert has been generated, and we'll also point out which clients we feel are affected by this issue. In the second example, we can see that we're getting an alert based on overconsumption on the network. So some of your clients have been affected by high bandwidth usage in the network. And again, we make some recommended fixes. Why not go to the group policy page, configure a group policy that stops your clients from overconsuming the network. Again, we have that anecdotal evidence as to why the alert has been triggered, along with the most recently affected users. And because voice of the customer is so important to Meraki, we also give you an opportunity to provide feedback around the helpfulness of this alert, as well as links to contact support should you feel that the root cause analysis and the recommended fixes that we've made have still not fixed the issue. Now we get to the sneak peek. So our team are looking at how we can use dashboard, use the data that we collected on dashboard, use the AI and ML smart engines in a way of solving complex issue in a matter of minutes as opposed to a matter of hours. And the first problem that we're looking to address is poor network performance. Now, I've been involved in wireless over 20 years now, and many a time I've come across this issue. And the industry is still yet to come up with a better term than sticky client syndrome. But in this situation, we will receive an alert notifying admins of clients that are connected to suboptimal APs. We'll provide root cause analysis along with a recommended fix and an action disconnect button in the email alert. We've chose to offer a manual disconnect option rather than automating it, just to give admins the freedom of choice. We'll also provide follow-on information pertaining to the client's reconnection to the network. Did it connect to the same AP, or did we successfully manage to encourage that client off that suboptimal access point and onto a more attractive access point? And again, as you saw with the email alerts, we'll also ask for feedback from the network admin to understand if this feature can be improved based on feedback from themselves. So I hope you enjoyed the Meraki Health update. I now just wanted to take what time we have left just to go through some of the highlight features of R28. So currently we have R27.6 as a stable version, but we have this next major update just around the corner. So some of the highlight features in R28, we have native support for electronic shelf labels or ESL, open roaming. We've revamped our access control page and incorporated a new Meraki Radius page in there, as well as launching wireless private network. So first off, let's get this out of the way. Meraki is not planning to join the shelf labeling business, but R28 does see MR's first third-party integration, and we've integrated with one of the market leaders in ESL, Margot Tag. Now, unlike traditional paper price tags, the product pricing on electronic shelf labels can be automatically and remotely updated whenever a price is changed from a central control server. So, as you'd expect, ESL is a huge advantage in retail. It frees up human capital by directing staff to high-value add tasks, such as restocking. The fact that the staff member has accurate information about shelf stocking levels and inventory real time on their devices using this ESL service. It helps reduce waste and overstocking. So let's take the analogy: you go into your preferred supermarket towards the end of the day, you're going past the delicatessen or the bakery part of the supermarket. It's not unusual to see a staff member feverishly repricing the bread or the meat, any perishable items, to minimize that waste. Now, I know from my own personal experience, those yellow labels don't always work. But if you have a system where you can dynamically introduce the same price reduction to combat the wastage of those perishable goods, again, makes the system so much more reactive for the customer. And then, last but not least, you've got the seasonal or the weekly offer updates. So the supermarket has those seasonal aisles. The stock is always changing in that supermarket. Rather than having a laborious task of going through, as well as changing the stock, but also changing the pricing levels, this system allows you to just be able to change the stock and then update the price label dynamically. So, reality today for our retail customers is that they need two autonomous systems for their networking needs. You have your Wi-Fi and BLE needs being met by Meraki access point, and you also then have your ESL network provided by a separate Margot Tag overlay network. With the new integrated ESL solution, there are no extra cabling involved, no truck roll or installation on site, no extra devices are required to maintain this service, and we don't require any additional PoE. All we use is a software container and the integrated IoT radio, and reprogram that IoT radio to communicate via that proprietary ESL protocol from Imago tag. We also see native support for open roaming in R28. And we know that the Open Roaming initiative was initially spearheaded by Cisco themselves before moving it across to the Wireless Broadband Alliance, where a lot of partners are now actively offering services. All of the technologies are now bundled into a framework to enhance the usage of guest Wi-Fi and offload traffic from cellular Wi-Fi networks. So some of our carrier customers, some of the advantages they're seeing with this onboarding is their ability to enhance the indoor coverage with the Wi-Fi overlay. They can also see an increase in monetization as well as a higher Wi-Fi attach rate using the Open Roaming standard. So available today, we can integrate with Open Roaming using an on-premise controller and a valid DNA Spaces subscription. We also have a hugely referenceable site in Canary Wharf. Moving forward, we're going to remove the dependency on that on-premise controller and integrate using RadSec. As I mentioned, we've also revamped the access control page. So if you log into Dashboard today, you will see a little button at the top right-hand corner of the access control page inviting you to try the new beta version of this. You click on that button and it will take you to the new access control page. Okay, one of the key features in the access control 2.0 page is that we've now given network admins the ability to enable or disable SSIDs within the access control menu rather than having to segue back out to the SSID overview page in order to enable or disable those services. Now, I mentioned earlier, voice of a customer is hugely important to Meraki, and we've seen 16 feature requests that have been addressed within Access Control 2.0 that have been made by our customers via the Make-A-Wish button in Dashboard. Got the ability to enable that RadSec integration in this new Access Control page, as well as being able to add additional radius identifiers to help with the granular control of radius authentication. One of the last features I wanted to talk to you about is wireless private network. Okay, now a lot of the customers I talk to in higher education require this at-home experience. Okay, so this is the ability for students to go to the dormitories, for members of the public to check into a hotel, but still have that home from home experience in that room. Now, the problem you've had traditionally with networks is that there's too many devices are discovered, and this raises questions from both a privacy and a security perspective within these industries. So we've looked to address this by enabling our Meraki WPN, which will give the users that personal network experience, even on a shared network or common VLAN. And what they will give them the capability to do is provide these little islands for their personal devices within that network. So the proposed workflow for WPN is that a network admin will enable WPN for the SSID in question. They will then configure an onboarding SSID and share it with their end users. So this has been hugely beneficial for our customers in higher education, because this actually takes away a lot of the pain of ownership of those dormitory networks. It's a huge administrative overhead if you have to have a member of your staff configuring all of these pre-shared keys, all of these devices that are going to connect to the dormitory network. With this provisioning portal, users are able to onboard onto the SSID, get redirected to the web portal, and then they can get their own personal pre-shared key. A pre-shared key is then used by all of their devices to connect to the dormitory SSID. And we have mechanisms behind the workflow that enable this isolation of their devices so that they can't see any of the other devices connected to the same layer 2 segment. So some of the guidelines from a WM perspective, it is only supported on SSIDs that are configured for IPSK without radius authentication. All the devices have to be on a common VLAN to be grouped within the same WPN. There is a limitation of 5,000 users for a SSID that is enabled with WPN. If you imagine from a scale perspective, certainly from a halls of residence, the way dashboard architects is that you would have a separate network for each logical building on the campus. So different network, same SSID, but you would get that 5,000 user limit for each building, which should be more than enough for any planning requirements. There will be a self-service portal provided by our technology partner, Splash Access. This isn't mandatory for the feature, but like I mentioned, without that self-service portal front end, it does require quite a huge administrative overhead for someone to be able to go into dashboard and configure all of these unique pre-shared keys. Now, just to finish off with a lot of the features that I've talked about from a matrix perspective are only supported on our Wi-Fi 6 APs. However, this feature matrix sheet here will show you which features are possible using our Wi-Fi 5 and our legacy APs. You'll be pleased to know that's everything I have for you today. I hope you found the session informative, and I just wanted to hand it back to Matt now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. There was lots of interesting, it looks like there's lots of great things to come with Meraki. We will be recording another podcast with someone else from Meraki to talk particularly about the IoT side of things. But there's one thing that I thought might be interesting to listeners to know now that I wasn't aware of, that Meraki has released some sensors.
Absolutely, yes, we have. Yeah, so using the Meraki access points that we've been discussing today, the first use case that our product team looked to address with the sensors is protecting the wiring closet, protecting your data center. So we've launched a range of temperature and humidity sensors, door open and close sensor, as well as a water leak detection sensor. So the idea is you have the data center deployed, you have a Meraki access point in that data center, and possibly a Meraki MV smart camera as well. These products use the BLE radio integrated in either the MV camera or the Meraki access point to backhaul onto the network. And then therefore, from a use case perspective, you have an MV camera at the door to the data center. You have a motion alert out of hours configured. So if you detect motion in the data center at 3 o'clock in the morning, send me an email alert. You also have a corresponding SMS from the smart sensor saying, did you know that the door has been activated at 3 o'clock in the morning? You can then, again, I've picked the wee hours of the morning, bleary-eyed, you pick up your smart device, you've got the dashboard application on the device. You can quickly observe the alerts and then segue to the MV camera in question so that you can observe this event as it unfolds.
Yeah, amazing. So I wasn't actually aware that Meraki had released these sensors, and I've got a couple here working in my office. I've got the door sensor and the temperature and humidity sensor, and they both work really well. It's really simple to get set up. I set up some alerts. I'd noticed quickly I probably wanted to increase the time for if I have my office door open. Otherwise, I was getting alerts quite often. So now I've said if it's open for longer than 30 minutes, send me a notification. Like you said, you can set up email or text. So really, really cool. I can see a lot of customers being interested in that, especially for protecting a data center. So really nice new products there from Meraki. And Steve, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on, replace Mac, and then talk to us about all the new things coming with Meraki with wireless. I'm looking forward. I think I'm going to enable these beta features now in my network so I can start having a look and play around with some of the things that you were discussing today. But I'm looking forward to seeing it in the production environment. I think it will really help the customers getting more overview into how the network's performing and any issues that they might be having, and help troubleshoot some of those problems more effectively. Well, hope you enjoy the features, Matt. Feel free to make a wish if you see any additional functionality you'd like to see. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve. I'm going to speak to you soon. You're welcome. Take care.
All the best, everyone.